Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to be trying to guide every single one of you through the variant Blood and Venom completion as easy and as effectively as I can. So overall I must say that the completion of this variant is definitely not overly tricky. I think it has the more straightforward final boss out of all 5 variants now that we have. And yeah, every single quest has a path or two that are relatively straightforward and don't really require any kind of like specific champions overall. Now definitely for everyone there will be different MVPs. For some of you it's going to be Venom the Duck, for some of you it's going to be obviously Doctor Doom, for many of you it's going to be Doctor Doom and Black Widow Clairvoyant, and Venom or Stealth Suit Spider-Man or Starking Hand Spider-Man. It really depends on what you have available. At large, I think in my mind this is a Mystic variant, and mainly focusing on a Mystic champions will probably give you the best results, because obviously Symbiote and Spider-Verse heroes, well, there aren't too many of them, and overall in Mystic class we have now a lot of great champions, and Mystic roster is what really kind of gets tested here, especially when it comes to the problem matchups. So anyways, let's just jump in the first quest. I'll go through each and every single one of these as quickly as I can. I'm gonna randomly select it. The rank 3 6-star Doom will go in by himself. Why not, right? And for me, I personally figured out that the easier way was this Energize Enhanced Special 1 path. However, many people consider this left side armor and strike back path to be easier, and as node combinations maybe they are easier. However, keep in mind that you will have War Machine, you will have, well, War Machine isn't too tough, but you will have Iron Man, Infinity War and Havoc to deal with. And with Havoc, with that strike back node, to be honest, you might not necessarily always need a champion with an armor buff to play around with him, and you can probably squeeze by with pretty much most of the characters in like a revive or two, so he doesn't have overly nasty node combinations that would make him a complete pain in the ass. And you would argue that this strike back could actually be helpful in pushing Havoc to level 2s, and that obviously will slow him down in detonating those plasma charges on you. So it's kind of in between whatever champions suit your lines best. You will either have to deal with this Mojo and Mysterio on this 100% power gain enhanced special 1 path, or you're gonna have to deal with Iron Man Infinity War and Havoc on this armor and strike back path. Definitely do not go to the right side. It's filled with annoying defenders and immunity debuffs and Bane. But when it comes to the final boss, Mighty Charge is like the biggest thing. Mighty Charge and debuff immunity, what to kind of like take in consideration. Now, reparry ability here is by far the most important one in my opinion. But all in all, obviously it's Captain Marvel. It's nothing too tricky to deal with. Keep in mind that with heavy-handed, yeah, that doesn't really do too much either way. And yeah, it's Captain Marvel, so bring in something and don't play awful. That will be it for Captain Marvel. There's no real need for a specific champion. Obviously, not rely on debuffs too much in the fight. Now we're gonna jump to the quest number 2 as soon as my game lets me. In chapter 1, and this is still like the Spider Hero chapter, and again, to be honest, I don't really think that global node is overly helpful, so you're probably better off sticking to your strongest champions of Mystic class, or maybe, I don't know, Venom the Duck. And in second quest, I think by far the easiest lane is here on the left side with Breakthrough. Breakthrough actually will let you increase your damage output, and there's only one kind of like tricky fight on this lane, which is this Iceman. This Iceman does quite significant amount of cold snap damage at start. Most of the rank 4 5-star champions will be barely able to survive it without boost, so all the 4 stars in rank 3 will pretty much get KO'd. But there are champions like Magic and Sorcerer Supreme, who obviously have damage mitigation and or energy resistance, who can deal with this Iceman. I personally use Sorcerer Supreme. Now, Sasquatch is a very new champion and very few people will have it. Sasquatch would work perfectly there. And Mephisto is also a cold snap immune. Those are kind of pretty much your 4 options. You can also always roll the dice with Agent Venom and have a chance to shrug off that cold snap debuff. So that'd be like a 5th solid option if you're bringing in relatively lower ranked champions. or if you're bringing in maxed out 5 stars, you can, and you have willpower node active, you might as well just try and eat up that damage and then just use rest of your characters for rest of the lane. But rest of the paths here are definitely well harder than the left one, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. And when it comes to the boss, Gamora is super simple champion to fight against. Can outrange both of the special attacks. She is stun immune. Her special attacks are unblockable, but you can just outrange her. And she has power shield active, which obviously will enable mystic champions probably to spam a lot of special attacks, or basically whoever. I think I took her down like Carnage or something, and it's really not all that hard to fight. Oscillate obviously is somewhat annoying. I never liked that node much when they got defensive and curl up in the corner. But yeah, again, it's Gamora. It's not gonna be that bad. So, quest number 3, Scarlet Witch boss. Probably the biggest problem boss, quote-unquote problem boss in this quest. And as far as the easy path go, I personally did this Power Focus 1 Enhanced Special 1 Aggression Prowess path. It's also very short, very straight up forward to the Scarlet Witch. It's only like 4 fights and you're at the boss already. We can see that some of these paths are a bit longer. Additionally, only tricky fight here is that Vision Arcus, where obviously if you have Dr. Doom, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. If you do not have Dr. Doom, there might be some trickier things to work on. But since this is like Mystic chapter, Mystic champions get a lot of boosts. And if you have Mystic Dispersion especially, you can just keep on nullifying his power gain buffs, and then you will also work around that armor break and cold snap that he plays on you. So he really isn't that bad on this node, especially because his power rate is significantly decreased as long as he's above a bar of power. So yeah, that's not too bad. Alternate relatively easy path would be this Fury, Ferris Fair, and Dulled node, and it's gonna slow you down at times, but there's like pretty much no difficult opponents. And if you do not have any decent counter for Vision Arcus, just pop on the left side here. Obviously, whenever you nullify anything from your opponents, then you will be power locked for like 2.5 seconds. So nullification abilities are not quite recommended. And Dulled node also will discourage you from placing debuffs on your opponent or buffs on yourself. But it's just going to be slightly longer. It's definitely not hard or tricky. Now, Scarlet Witch is probably the hardest boss in this quest, and the reason why she is hard, because there's always an RNG chance that she's going to place a poison debuff on you, especially when she combines it with heal block. And also the debuff duration is extended by 100%, so whenever she does poison you, that is going to be very long duration poison, and you can pretty much get KO'd even if you're using max 5-star champions or close to KO'd. So obviously you are ideally looking at poison immune champions. Black Widow Clairvoyant is like the first example there, but remember that because of Vivify node you cannot power drain her. That is how I get KO'd there. Then we have Mephisto and Dormammu, who are also poison immune. And Dragon Man is coming to the contest soon, who is poison immune. And then there is Agent Venom, who again has a chance to shrug off the debuff. And I mentioned before that Dr. Voodoo can actually do a very solid job if you place an odd combo and reduce Scarlet Witch's ability accuracy. And yeah, that is for this quest. Nothing kind of like too painful here either. And let's move on to quest number 4. And quest number 4 boss was Storm, if I remember correctly, with bleed vulnerability. So that is a relatively simple fight. Again, you have to appreciate the kind of like OG champs as bosses, and that they are relatively simple to fight. Now, the easy path on this lane is definitely going to be this Arc Overload path, where basically it's even better for most of the Mystic champions. That Arc Overload is just fueling your Mystic Dispersion and champion abilities. Because they get buffs, you get to nullify them, then you get to trigger all of your cool effects, and you just get to go ham at them. Only kind of like really, well, not really, somewhat tricky fight here would be that Mr. Sinister, which again you can just deal with most of the champions. The fight is just going to be somewhat longer. Do not rely on damage over time champions too much, because obviously he can reflect your damaging debuffs. And yeah, I'm not gonna discuss too much the rest of the lanes. It's clearly by far the easiest one here. And then we have this adaptive arc overload, aspect of evolution, burden of might, bleed, vulnerability, storm. And again, it's obviously if you pick a bleeder champion, you're going to be dealing with her quite a bit easier, considering aspect of evolution also kind of like punishes the fights that do drag on too long, because you will effectively be unable to crit. She's going to have huge block penetration and all that other stuff, but it's storm with burden of might basically, so it's nothing too crazy there. And now let's move on to the final two quests. So the boss here is that symbiote Spidey, which is super simple if you have Venom. Also, probably Spider-Gwen and Stealth Suit Spidey would do extremely well here. This chapter is made for symbiote champions, and the global buff is somewhat useful, but it's really not necessary. You can just generally rely on your Mystic champions for the most part. And yeah, an easy path here. Again, quite definitely is going to be the... No, not quite definitely, actually. This can be debated, because we have Limber and Flux Dispersal. So that was the easy path that I chose for myself, just because based on opponents there was no difficult opponent, and Flux Dispersal does make the lane longer. However, if you are using a symbiote champion, thanks to that global node, you can kind of like disable the Flux Dispersal node for as long as you have that symbiote buff active. Yeah, so I chose this one. You do need to be wary of that Limber, but this is only a 10% Limber, and you still have a fair bit of those parries available to you. So if you're using relatively decently ranked champions, there shouldn't be too many surprises. And again, there aren't really any tricky fights. So for me, that was the easiest lane. And some people have chosen this Psychic and Life Transfer lane as their preferred lane. And obviously, if you're using like Dr. Doom, this would be absolutely perfect for you. And it's quite an interesting node combination. I actually have yet to go through and try it out myself, but many people seem to have enjoyed it. You do have to keep in mind, though, that you will have Dormammu, Blade, and Guillotine 2099 on this path, so they are somewhat trickier defenders. But yeah, that is about it when it comes to the final boss. As I said, you can bring in Spider-Gwen, Stealth Suit Spider-Man, you can bring in Venom, shut down the waves and have a good time. He's quite stacked, he has Limber active and increased power gain, but it's really not that bad. And the final quest, will be Venom. And there is again a very clear-cut, easy path, which is just right down the middle. Simply outlast and buff duration. There are no real hard opponents here on this lane, maybe outside of Invisible Woman, but it's not that bad to play around her as well. 100% the easiest way how to get through this quest. And yeah, Venom final boss, the only real thing that he has is 100% increased power gain, Mystic Ward, and enhanced special 2. So basically special 2 is unblockable, so you do not want to push him to level 2. And that's about it. Don't push him to level 2 if you are not consistent in evading his level 2, and just slow play it. That fight will be quite long. That Venom is quite stacked. I personally used Longshot and Dr. Doom, I think, for most part here. Now be mindful of that Mystic Ward, because nullification abilities will be tricky. However, for instance, Longshot places Fate Seal and it still works, and yeah, you have quite happy time over there. But I have seen people do this fight with Venom, Venom against Venom. I mean, I have seen people do this fight with a Spider-Gwen and that Enderweight. I have seen people do this fight with many different champions, because it really isn't all that difficult compared to most of the other final bosses. And yeah, that is pretty much it. Job's a good one. Relatively simple variant to complete for sure. I'm gonna try and explore it within the next couple of days, and then I'm gonna post exploration guides on the rest of the stuff and like MVP champions and all that stuff. But if you liked today's video, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya!